but they don't understand, like, even though you're sitting on your laptop and you're actually working, like, for example, you're designing something like software or like, you're writing code, like, people don't get it. Like, traditional people understand, oh, like, if like you're a lawyer, like there's a file that you're reading, or like you're a CA, you're
it
crunching some numbers.
always ends up like, karte kya ho?
Exactly, absolutely.
So another thing is where you can just silent quitting, where you can just ghost your employer. And I think
people do that.
people do that. Yeah, so
And this never existed when we were working, right? Like, I mean, it was just crazy. Hi, welcome to Mind the Gap, your backstage pass to witnessing the collision of different generations. I'm your host Shivam Sood. I'm a millennial and I run a startup where I have the privilege of working with many colleagues who belong to Gen Z, others who are millennials like myself and even beyond. In this podcast, we have a spirited discussion where we try and peel back the layers of the generational gap that might exist between us. In today's episode, we are discussing a topic I find myself thinking about more and more: education. Sitting here in 2023, post the pandemic, I really find myself wondering what the Gen Z perspective on education is and how it maps on my own formal education years as a millennial. This is what we will explore today, as I'm joined by my two Gen Z colleagues, Chavi and Lavi, no relation by the way, as well as my peer Shan on the panel. Some of them made massive pivots in their education and some chose relatively traditional paths, and others like myself lie somewhere in between. I'm very excited to kick off and hear from everyone. So let's sit back, relax, and join us as we mind the gap together.
I took like a big decision of shifting to content creation, which in fact still like people don't understand what actually it is, content creation. So a lot of my relatives are still not aware of what I do and how I earn money, how I'm purchasing what all I'm purchasing. I took humanities. I was the first person who took humanities in our home. So they were completely fine with it and they're like, yeah, do whatever you want to.
But you had mentioned, I think I remember one time you were talking and you had mentioned that, in school when you were taking humanities, there was some pushback from your teachers, right?
Yeah, so that's like a whole another thing. Like, that's when we were talking about mentors, how important they are while you're making certain decisions in your life. For example, I took humanities again, that I was fortunately good in academics. So my teachers were like, why are you taking humanities? Because they still have this thing that, you're sharp mind, so you have a sharp mind, so you'll take say PCB or PCM, say take science. So
but that's the societal thing, right, that we are talking about, exactly, because people have such a mindset.
Again.
To date, yeah.
For sure. So they were all like, why are you taking humanities? You're fine with academics and stuff like that. So then it was like, I knew how messed up it is. So, but in my case, it did not affect me at all because my parents were very supportive, and I've seen my friends, take these very hard decisions when they didn't want to take a particular subject or go with a particular career, but they had to because of the societal and cultural pressures.
And in your family, everyone is, what does your family members do? Like, what is your dad or your brother?
My father, we have like a business, so that's a completely different thing. And my brother took commerce, CA. Okay. My sister she was doing PCB, so she wanted to be a doctor. She couldn't, so that's
so CA, thing. Doctor, and influencer, social media influencer.
I was a completely different one since forever. So
no, that's great that you had that support of your parents as well, right?
I think that really helped me, and what I feel is what I am today is just because of the support that my parents, gave me.
Lavi, what about you?
So society was never been like easy on us when we try to like jump into something very different. Imagine a kid who loves colors and creativity and wanna be a designer. But this society, this world was like, nah, you cannot do this. Be a doctor, be an engineer. And it was more like, I want to have pizza, but they're like handing me the ball of salad. No, I want a pizza. I want to eat pizza. Yeah. So I tell you this one story of my there was this uncle in my neighborhood. So after my engineering entrance exam, he came to our house and just wanted to check up on my colleges. What colleges have you get your hands on? And I told him that I don't want to pursue engineering. I want to be a designer. So he was like, the reaction on his face was like, as if I'm going to a circus.
It's like that for everyone, even for me. Like, growing up, like, it was very different. Like, my dad wanted me to, like, do something very specific. Like, I always thought I'm going to join him in business.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. He, like, one fine day in high school, he was like, I want you to become an investment banker. I was like, what? I thought I want to join your business, right? But like, that didn't clearly happen. So it's really like, depends on like your parents also. Like, my parents wanted me to get into that. Unfortunately, like, when I did graduate from economics and finance, there was the financial crisis of 2008, right? So like, I was jumping into the the real world, and like the world was crashing down, like the finance world was crashing down. So it was really funny, but like, it just shows how like, like your parents make your choices or the society makes choices for you, but it's not necessarily something that you want to do. But and today I do nothing of economics and finance, right? Like, I'm in marketing and like, like running an e-commerce company. So yeah.
Yeah, but my family played like a very major role between this. So they kept me going actually. I pushed back all those like doubts and trusted my gut, and my family was like my cheerleaders. They are my cheerleaders and they saw passion in me.
So your parents are very influential, is what you're saying, right? Like,
Yeah.
in your life.
Yeah.
So I just feel like, I think that the difference is that like, when somebody is like, I think what we were also like kind of talking about today is how people influence like, your career and your choices over time and in life. And I think for me, like, there was a big influence, and I'm sure, like you said, your parents had a big influence on you. And I don't know about you, Shan, like, what do you think? Like, did you think like your parents had a big influence on your eventual career choices?
So
or you kind of found your own path?
So I found my own path, but my father was a diplomat. And the one thing he told me is that do anything, just don't become a diplomat, especially for So that's the only influence that he had. Other than that, I just kind of had to find my own path. And a lot of it was like, there was a role of mentors as well. So some people guiding you along the path. But I think it's the most important thing is to figure out what you're good at, like what you're capable of doing and what you're interested in doing. Because if you're not good at it, you're not going to be any...
Absolutely. And society doesn't get it, right? Like, I think like a lot of times, like, I've had people, even like when I started my first business, right? People are like, oh, what are you doing? Like, what is the technology? I don't get it. Like, is this even real work? Because, they would like necessarily feel like, oh, you're just sitting in front of a laptop and not doing anything. There's actual no work happening. But they don't understand, like, even though you're sitting on your laptop and you're actually working, like, for example, you're designing something like software or like, you're writing code, like, people don't get it. Like, traditional people understand, oh, like, if like you're a lawyer, like there's a file that you're reading, or like you're a CA, you're
it
crunching some numbers.
always ends up like, karte kya ho?
Exactly, absolutely. Navi, what's your take on the evolving landscape of education?
Education back then was more very rigid around textbook and classrooms, but now it is traditionally it was more of like fitting a big elephant into a Mini Cooper, which is standardized, very rigid, and trust me when I say this, creativity was barely on the syllabus. So this was traditionally, and now things have flipped, and we have online learning courses which came into the scene like superhero, like legit superhero. And with that, it's like a window. It's like your laptop window is a window to the world. So you can learn whatever you want. You can learn whichever subject you want to learn, wherever you learn. And come on, you can learn in your pajamas. So you can learn from cafes. You can learn from your room. So
tell us a little bit more about your education in your high school and how it's evolved over time. So for example, like, how was it when you were in school and like now you're working? So right, so how has it evolved, especially since COVID even?
So I was a science student, and being a science student, everybody used to say like, I'll be the engineer, and I was the like sheep, and I was following that lead. But then I decided to like switch it because I wasn't having fun with that. I had like crazy difficult time where I used to like cry all day because my marks was like, my scores were not improving. I was struggling, studying day and night, wasn't taking care of myself. Then I realized that this is not for me and I think I should switch. That's where I decided that F up to the engineering and I'll be the designer. I want to be a designer. The art is where my heart belongs.
Of course.
So yeah.
It's important to follow your passion, right?
I learned most of my like designing through like online.
Online courses.
So yeah, so it's like you're not stuck to the same conveyor belt anymore, and design is not mystery anymore. Everybody knows
So
about
even the
it.
design, I think industry is evolving, right? So it's, I mean, a lot of times I think a lot of design now is digital.
Yeah.
Right, so I think it's important to move online and learn all those courses.
Yeah,
which
come
are
on.
being
We
taught
have
online.
we have YouTube, Skillshare, Coursera, and whatnot. Like possibilities are endless. You can learn whatever you want now. So now schools has this vocational courses. These courses are like very trendy spotlight these days. If you want to learn animation in school now, you have vocational courses. You can do it. So back then, when I was I was kid on my school days, so it wasn't there. For me, the design was just like my pencil and my sketchbook, paintbrush and the palette. Education system is updated from black and white to this RGB Technicolor.
Great. What about you, Chavi? What's your take on this?
I think what she said, obviously the conventional stuff that happens that used to happen when we were in school. Like I passed school when in 2018. So all my school life, I was only excited about this one subject that I had to take when I will come in class 11. That was fashion studies.
Okay.
So I was like, when I will be there, like I'll take fashion studies and then I'll study. So that was the only.
And what did you
subject.
study in school? Like what did you?
11th and 12th.
Yeah.
Humanities.
Humanities. Okay.
So
fashion studies was just a part
just
of
a part of it, and we were only allowed to take it when we were in class 11. So again, we didn't have enough options, and the conventional stuff was there. Even though CBSE provided us with a lot of subjects, but the faculty wasn't there, and you were supposed to take PCB, PCM, humanities or commerce, and even though CBSE allows us to take physics and history or whatever subject, but in schools they have stuck to this one thing. So I think now things have changed, and you have a lot of more freedom, and with the help of technology you can learn a lot more. When we were in class 11, 12, there was like YouTube, of course, but I think it was more for just entertainment. But right now people are learning a lot of stuff.
You mean like they're
YouTube.
using it for learning more?
Yeah.
Than they're using for
So YouTube, say again, as she mentioned, skill.
YouTube was mostly for the fashion and the hacks.
Yeah. So I think it has
DIY.
evolved a lot,
Yeah,
and it is of course helping.
Well, on that note, talking about evolution, right? I mean, Chan, like you've been. I mean, let's talk about like from your time how education is involved, right? Because I think the time that you and I were growing up, we didn't have YouTube even, right? Like in high school. So take us back first, like, to how it was when we were growing up, I guess, and how it's evolved over time, because, a lot has changed since then, right?
Yeah. So I've thought about this a lot. One of the things is that if you look at the modern education system, it was created in the Industrial Revolution to take farm labor and put them into factories. So that's the framework you're working with. Now, to take that framework and to make it evolve properly, you really need, the world's changed in 75 years. So the framework that originally existed is totally not relevant anymore. When we were in high school, there was no YouTube. There was no, now if you look at Khan Academy or something, I remember I was really bad at math. And if I could go back to high school today, I'd kill it at math, because I'd just go to Khan Academy, just rewind, until I understood the thing. Yeah. And I think going forward, after high school as well, I think going forward, the career options and the technical stuff you can learn online for $10, it's like the world's open to any opportunities that you're looking to do. So I think we're at a really good space. I think a lot of this also was expedited during the pandemic, because the pandemic forced you to onboard technology, which you didn't have before. And I think the future looks pretty good, as long as we can keep evolving. And I think every 5 to 10 years, the tech stack changes. As the tech stack changes, you're going to see different forms of evolution, students coping with new problems to learn. But yeah, so I think we're at the best time in terms of personal education. I think this is the best time, and I think it's only going to get better going forward.
Yeah, great point. Personally speaking, I agree with you. And for me also, going back, I think in high school, we were very used to the traditional form of education, buying a textbook and reading off a textbook, and that's the only form of learning that you have. We didn't have online learning as much. And even now, for a lot of us, for me even, I think reading a textbook is more meaningful and more fulfilling than probably it's reading an article online. And that's just how I guess we were raised, right? But I mean, saying that, like, like when I graduated from college, like, I mean, I did economics, right? And I got into entrepreneurship and I got into business, and I wanted to learn digital marketing, right? And I never studied that in high school. So it was very hard for me to like understand like how do I learn marketing, right? Do I buy a textbook? Do I like go back to school? Like, do I like do my masters? But then I think like that's the time, like, all these online courses are also coming up, right? Like, you could easily go online. You could learn even how to code, for example. You could like, go take an online course like from Facebook or like Google. So I think that has really like sort of helped a lot of people, which traditionally wasn't available when we were growing up, right? Like, this education was so like, straightforward, just like go to a textbook, open, and that's the only way you'll be able to learn.
It was limited, basically.
Very, very limited, right? And today I think it's so amazing that like, so many people like today, like, for example, like you said, like, I want to become a designer from an engineer. That's possible today, which wasn't possible in our time, which is amazing.
I always think of technology as something that expedites a regular process, so it makes it faster and easier. And when you look at education, technology is used as a mechanism to deliver the educational content in a better way. When it comes to careers, I think technology is very important because every 3 to 5 years, the tech stack changes at work, and you have to keep learning the new tech stack. One of the things I noticed when I first started working was that a lot of the old timers, a lot of the senior management, they couldn't use basic Outlook like back in the day. They couldn't use basic apps, so they were reliant on like their younger colleagues to help them out. A lot of people were intimidated by Excel. A lot of people were intimidated by like PowerPoint back in the day. I know that's a lot easier now with like Google and the G Suite and everything else. So that is getting easier, but there's always going to be a new tech stack or a new app that you have to learn. So I think the most important thing when it comes to both is just being the ability to keep learning and to be able to learn something new every 3 to 5 years.
I think technology has impacted a lot. For example, if we see education right now, like in our times, it was all textbooks. But then now if you see people are, for notes, we had registers, and then now you have your iPads and you can just write your notes. And like, even for just the simplest of things, you need technology right now when it comes to education, mailing assignments, say creating WhatsApp groups to circulate important messages. In schools, I'm saying. And then in careers, of course, I feel that it has created a lot more job opportunities. For example, see us. Social media exists because of the technology. Right now, a brand cannot function without being present on social media. Social media managers, graphic designers, content creation, all these job opportunities are there only because of technology.
I think even in education, like you mentioned, even for schools and parents, right? Like, for example, I think parents are so more involved in their child's education now because everything is integrated through technology.
Yeah.
Like, parents are more informed about what your child is up to, like, from the get-go. And I think back in the day, like, at least my parents were completely lost, when it comes to like what I'm up to at school, versus today where like, parents know exactly what the child is up to, what the child is learning. And so I think that has definitely had a very huge impact on education, and especially integrating like parents into their their child's education as well, right? What about you, Lavi? What do you think?
So yeah, technology has unlocked many possibilities for us nowadays, and for me it was like a passport for my future, my career designing. And I used to be a girl who used to use laptop just for the Netflix and TV shows, series, just stuff like that only. And then look at me now, I'm using 3D software, as complicated software as it can be. So the video editing software, Photoshop. So back then I used to think like Photoshop is all about like making your boobs and booty bigger, your like airbrushing your face, beautifying. This was the concept in my head that Photoshop used like do. And look at me now, I'm working with software, Photoshop, Illustrator and whatnot.
So it basically got you here.
Yeah.
You are here because of the technology.
Because of the technology.
Learned a lot.
So technology was like a magic wand for me. So did you ever have this time like, I am never gonna get this right?
Yeah, always.
Yeah, we've all been there, and I've been there like multiple of times. and I used to like cry because of my like, unsatisfied output, because I was learning on my own, because so I used to make mistake. My outputs were very bad. Feedbacks, I used to get very bad feedbacks, but and those were the moment I used to cry and like sit silent. Then my family thing comes into the scene. They are my stress buster, because for a reason they are my stress buster. My mom used to come into my room and says like, "Isko band karo and let's have a chai tea session." So like chai, the literal chai, and the tea.
Has your mom been your biggest mentor in?
My entire family. So and my brother.
But one person who completely stands out.
My father. Like my pa was like, he has my aunt. So my brother, he used to come and like pick me up and say, "Let's go. We're going for the ice cream." Because I was sad, and he used to like do this thing. My sister was like, "What do you want? Why such faces? Do you want money? Do you want to go out shopping?" You know what? Having a mentor, the studies have like proven this, that having a mentor will increase your success rate to 86%. And why not?
Yeah, of course.
Everyone should have mentors.
No, I agree. And that was very sweet of you to like, mention the thing about your parents and how they play such an important role. And I hope they really watch this.
Because it was that time of lockdown, no? So we were all stuck into the like house and So.
Right. Sharon, what do you think? Apart from me, who has really sort of, had a very huge impact in your life?
So mentorship, I think, is extremely important, and I think it does increase your chances of success significantly. But I think it's a very important choosing which your mentors should depend on your goals. So if I want to become a microbiologist, I wouldn't ask my father because he's not a microbiologist. I'd ask like a microbiologist or someone who understands the field a little bit. And also, there is a little caveat that I would suggest, which is your mentors come from a different age where technology was different and the processes were different. Things are very different. Every 20 years, like the way we do business, the way we do everything changes. So just taking their advice and then kind of projecting it into the current circumstance and making sense of it yourself is also very important. But yeah, I agree with Lavi that like mentorship is extremely important, and you're blessed if you have very good mentors.
So I have a question. So let's say, for example, how do you seek a mentor? Like, like you said, like, if you're seeking a mentor for like a specific thing, it might not be your dad because he's not an expert on the subject.
Right.
But how does one go and seek a mentor if they don't have that in their network?
So usually if you're looking for mentorship around like a professional program, then usually through your school or your professional group or your alumni network or someone you meet at a conference of that profession. I think that's the best way. And I think that relationship is developed over time. You can't just walk up to someone and say, "Will you be my mentor?" It kind of develops over a little bit of time. And they also have to see something in you to be giving you mentorship, if it's not your family, that is. The traditional job market's cool, but everyone's competing for the same resource. Freelancing kind of like sets you up for, you could set up like a freelance shop in 24 hours or less. And I think that's interesting. But I think the most important thing that freelancers need to remember is they need to self-motivate. So in the job, your boss, there's like fear, right? Your boss, your colleagues, everyone's
competing.
Fear
in a job?
In a job, like your boss is coming down
like
on
someone
you. You know
is,
what I mean?
But nobody fears me here, man.
No, I mean like there's deadlines, then you have your peers,
you're right.
So you have coworkers, there's like deadlines you need to meet. But when you're freelancing, it's just all arbitrary. You're setting it up yourself. So it's very important if you're very self-driven and you have your own kind of deadlines.
But I disagree actually. In freelancing also, I think there are deadlines. I just feel like, in India specifically, people just don't adhere to them. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's the discipline issue which exists. And again,
I think freelancers do adhere to their...
No, I don't think so. I work with enough freelancers, and trust me, they go missing.
We are very unusual with our
They go missing, like, So I just feel that, like, it depends, I think, on discipline. You know what I mean? It's not that they don't have a deadline, they do. And I think, like, clients have more expectations from freelancers than probably from their own employees in both ways, right?
I think the motivation part that he said is entirely different because... in a freelancing situation, we can just back off also. If I'm not motivated enough, I'll be like, I don't want to do it. And I won't take work. Say, for example, when you're doing a job, you will have to do it. But when you're freelancing, you have an option to not do it because you're not motivated enough.
No, but I think people in jobs also are not. I'm sorry, we're going to come back to. We're going to circle back to you, but I just had a quick point. So I think even in jobs, it depends nowadays, right? I think like what I've seen with the younger generation, and maybe it's a generational thing. And today, like I feel people quit jobs on the whim of that, like I'm not motivated or I'm not feeling it, or the vibes are wrong, right? Like I feel like that happens today. Like in our time, it wasn't like that. Like nobody was quitting jobs because it was very hard to get a job, and there was a whole process to get a job. And I think today people take that for granted, right? Like I don't think they value it as much, or they probably value themselves more and their own time more, or but I feel back in the day was very, very different. And I don't know what you feel about that, but I think from our time when we were like job seekers, I think it was a very different scenario than it is today.
Yeah, so I think today's, especially the next generation, I think they're pretty liberated, where if you don't like something, you just walk out, no 2-week notice. I think that's great.
Yeah, that is the
tell us about silent quitting.
vibe man.
Yeah.
Tell us about like.
So another thing is where you can just silent quitting, where you can just ghost your employer, and I think
people do that.
people do that. Yeah, so,
and this never existed when we were working, right? Like it was just crazy.
But I wish we knew about it.
Yeah, now in hindsight,
probably would have done it.
I mean, not as employers now, but I feel as employees, I wish I knew this. So yeah, what do you guys think? I mean, it'd be good to get your perspective on it.
I love freelancing. Like
Freelancing are also there.
Good to know.
designers and freelancing are like goes all together. And freelancing is like I'm the captain of the ship. I can choose my clients. I can choose my rates. I can choose wherever I want to work. With freelancing, I can work in my pajamas, but it's not
but
always.
now we have work from home too, right? So like, I mean, I think that flexibility after COVID has existed, but most companies have work from home.
But that extra paycheck of freelancing.
So now I think we're talking about the pros of like, I think freelancing while you also have a job, right? What I'm trying to say is, what are the cons of just freelancing? Let's say you're not working anywhere and you're just as a freelancer. What are some of the cons that in your mind you think exist if you're just as a freelancer versus working in a job?
It's not like always you have work always in your hands.
No security.
Okay? No security at all. And if you're
so no paycheck security, no money coming in.
No money. That's very important actually.
It's not all roses. Like I think the fact is there are a lot of freelancers who are struggling. Like it's like people don't have.
I myself struggle a lot.
Yeah. And it's hard, and and people don't pay. Like I mean, I'm sure you've been lucky enough that every client has paid. Sometimes people really shaft freelancers because they feel, what is that person going to do? Like take me to court, it's going to take 30 years. So it's not easy navigating through the freelance world.
I think freelancing like independently, if you want to start, it's not possible. You have to you will have to have a job first and then do it side by side, and then maybe you can just switch to freelancing all
when you're like very secured. Also, this around 2020ish. So freelancer contributed like $1.96 trillion like amazing amount to US economy. So I mean, yeah, freelancers are contributing and it is a solid career. I might like turn myself into a full-time freelancer maybe someday.
Yeah, why not? I mean,
not very no anytime sooner.
No, it's okay, you can.
Yeah.
go
home and never come back.
Because a lot of time people with future work, they talk about remote working as future work, right? Yeah. Apart from the technology and like everything that we've discussed, did you envision this like probably 10 years ago that you would be working remotely and be as effective, if not more?
So I didn't think that it would be as effective, but I knew it was possible, and I knew that if you look at the tech stack that we use for remote work, it's existed for the past 15 years. Like high-speed internet, connectivity, cameras, mics, they've existed for the past 15 years. No one did it. So now all of a sudden people were forced to kind of onboard onto that during the pandemic. But yet again, even though travel's become less, it's not put airlines out of business. Like everything's still going on as it is. It's just a different way in which we're adapting the technology.
And lastly, do you think it's more effective or it's less effective, like remote work, like for example?
So remote work is more effective for people that are experienced.
Okay, please say that again.
Please say it again. Please say it again because he has a great point. Yeah.
So remote work is very effective for people that are experienced. but for like someone just starting out, I don't think it's
absolutely
as effective.
And I absolutely
why
agree
is
with
that?
I don't think it's as effective because they don't have the
the discipline,
the structure and the discipline. So the structure of a workplace, where you kind of like you go in there and it like you really hate it for the first 3 months, but you know you have to perform something in a certain amount of time. Like that only comes after you've worked for like a year or so, or at least 2, depending on the
See, I have a point to add there, right? Like I think a lot of times when people are just starting out, right? Like they always see, especially if you come from the freelance mindset, right? Like, hey, like, you know, I want to be freelancer, I want to have my thing, and you seek the same thing in the job market, right? The problem with that is, you know, when you're learning in a new company and a new job, the more you are with your team and you work as like, you know, like in small teams or whatever, like in a group, the learnings you're going to get from that, you will not be able to get that when you work in a silo, and especially if you work by yourself.
And the exposure also.
And the exposure as well. Because see, if you today like tell yourself that, hey, I'm not going to learn anything from you just because you're not in my field, or like, you know, you are not in a related field, I think that's where you make a huge mistake, right? Remote work helps absolutely when you're already structured and your job is very set. You know, when you're 6 years, 5 years down the line, like, you know, you're already very set in your ways, you've learned a lot. Like now it's just about, you know, being efficient and not actually learning so much. Early years is all about learning and adapting and, you know, like, and changing and unlearning and then learning again. So it's all about that, right?
And I wanted to add as well, when I was very young, I didn't quite understand the seriousness of a job. I don't know about the generation today, but like if I went in somewhere, I was like, yeah, whatever. But there's millions of dollars of equipment, capital, and everything invested. So the business guy, it's not a joke. Like it's very serious, right? But for me, it was like kind of a joke when I was like, whatever, 22. So I think that seriousness.
I'm 22.
So that seriousness comes from kind of understanding that it's a real, like it's important and there's like a lot riding at stake. And you kind of need to like be like, okay, this is serious for someone, for the person employing me.
So, you know, even when I was like younger, like I'm very similar to Shan, I was also like that, right? Like, I mean, we go into work and not be very serious about like, you know, stuff, like always, you know, I was on the phone. I remember I was doing an internship in London, and then I had a full-time job. And then I would just call my girlfriend at the time, like, you know, from like the phone as soon as my boss used to leave the office, right? So that was like most of my time. And as soon as he used to come and he used to hang up, and then by the end of the month, he's like, oh, why is my bill so high? Like, you know, what's going on? Because that time there was the internet calling, right? So yeah, like it changes, right? But now if you think about like how serious you're a job, it's very, very different, right? Now when I come to work, it's not always just being about the phone. It's about like, you know, being in a structure, getting stuff done. So that changes. And I think that's very important. Like I said, because we were talking about remote work and, you know, how future of work will look like. I think the new generation will really miss out if they don't come to work. Okay. You know, the more they stay away, a lot of interns also today like come up to me and they say like, you know, oh, but why can't I work remotely? I'm like, listen, I have no problem you working remotely. The problem is that you're not going to learn anything working remotely.
Okay.
Right? The issue is with you, not your learning. For me, it's not going to affect my life or job if you come here and show me your face every day. The point is that if you don't come to work, you are the one missing out. So I think that's what a lot of people need to understand, like of the younger generation, I guess.
So what's your take on hybrid? Like hybrid sort of?
I'm all for it. Like you said, I'm all for it as long as you have that structure, right? See, again, like I think when you're just starting out, you don't really get the fact that you are the one who needs to learn. The employer or the person who's already experienced is already set in his ways. You know, so I think it's more it's more for the person doing the job in the younger days versus, you know, the employer or somebody who's already been working for like 15 years, for example.